Hi, I'm Matt with State of Flux, here to give you, not a review, but this time something a little different. Normally I do come to you with reviews, but this time I'm giving you a pitch for a movie. This is something I've been wanting to do for quite some time. I've just been looking for the right project to do so, and with the recent announcement of the 6th Scream installment coming out, that really got the gears turning. And that seems to be the catalyst that made me offer a pitch instead. This pitch is going to have some very obvious spoilers for the previous Scream film, Scream 2022 or whatever you want to call it, as well as various other Scream films within the whole franchise. So be warned, spoilers are here. And I'm going to be upfront by saying, I don't think we need a Scream 6. I really don't. But the gears got turning when one of my friends kind of asked me what I thought the next Scream was going to be about, and I was like, honestly, I just don't want it, have no interest in it, but if they were going to do it, this is what they should do. And then I spat out the idea, and it just kept snowballing from there, and the idea grew to something that I think would be an interesting film that could play with the traditional tropes that you get within the franchise, but also spiral into something quite a bit different and larger, and really build upon some of the commentary that the previous film laid. Now, diving right into that spoiler territory, the previous film's killers were heavily built around the concept of toxic fandom, and I think that's an interesting angle to carry the franchise with. It also ended with Gale finally maturing to her greatest point within the franchise of not exploiting these crimes for personal gain any longer, and instead she's not going to write another book to be turned into a movie. Instead she's going to write a book about Dewey and the excellent human being that he was. Well, that got me thinking. If they were going to make another one of these movies, my fear is that you would bring back Gale or Sidney and just blithely off them. And I don't think that should be done. I think those two characters, especially Sidney, are so vital and important to the field of horror and the conceptual idea of the final girl, this woman or women that rose from such trauma to the point where they're at in the previous Scream movie, where they're no longer allowing any kind of trauma to burden them, but they're going to confront it head on. That can only play on for so many times before studio kind of digging gets those characters killed off. Even though it's not necessarily good for the narrative of their story arc. So I wouldn't have Sidney or Gale in the film in any really meaningful capacity. Instead, I would focus on the fandom at large. And I'd focus heavily on the internet. The internet is a tool within these Scream films that has brought killers together before, right? The killers in Scream 2 were brought together entirely because they met on an internet chat site. Psycho website classified as the line that Mickey gives. And it got me thinking that that's also exactly how the previous Scream killers came together as well. Well, if there are truly a network of people out there that are so committed to their fandom of this franchise, or committed to keeping the spirit of the Loomis Stu Macher duo alive, rather than having it set in a single location, a single town, let's make this broad. Let's make this a national problem. And you have killers, or a person or a group of people who are organizing and orchestrating Ghostface slashings across the nation in an effort to get what they feel is the cut of a movie that they are being deprived of. In Scream 2022, it's implied that like the media never calls out Ghostface as being the one responsible for these murders. Murders are happening in Woodsboro. The media is kind of being hush-hush about it. Gale goes there, but then by the end of the film, she commits that she is not going to let these killers get any form of any form of fame. She wants them to die in anonymity. Well, that's where you build. How about this network of like ghost faces or fans or whatever decide that they want the cut they're being deprived of, the killer cut, this hidden Scream movie, when another Rian Johnson Scream movie is coming out, or Stab a movie is going to be coming out within their own lore. So that movie that was so maligned that people hated is getting a sequel, and when there's a true event that they could really build upon. Rumblings that Dewey died because of Ghostface. You could time it with the release of Gale's book and have that's how Gale is in the story, just sort of in the periphery, like advertising this Dewey book. So the killers are organizing these like little Ghostface attacks as a way of like putting this story at ransom. Like, they will stop the killings if this story gets released. Not unlike you are seeing with things like the Ayer cut. And anytime there's a disliked version of a movie, supposedly there's a director's cut out there that fixes every single problem. The Abrams cut of Rise of Skywalker, the Lucas cut of Rise of Skywalker, and all this kind of germinated with the Snyder cut, which was a very real and honest thing. But from that spiraled other things that really are conducive mostly to toxic fandom than they are to a lost movie that's really out there. So that's where the commentary can kind of be laid. And I'm going to go one step further. If you want to have this be about legacy, you can have it be that that one of these guys online is anonymously throwing out there that like, all right, if we don't get our cut of the movie or the facts that the previous Ghostface killings in Woodboro were in fact Ghostface and who the killers were, so that a movie could spring forth from this, we're going to publish the names of previous survivors within the Scream lore, i.e. the cameraman, Joel from Scream 2 that we haven't seen since, the cops from Scream 3 who've never really made their appearances again, maybe even the sheriff, the original sheriff, Sheriff Burke from the first Scream film. Or this is where you could tie in Hayden Panettiere, who is confirmed to have sort of survived Scream 4, as well as the core survivors from the previous Scream movie. Their names are put up along with Sidney and Gale, and so you have Ghostface going to those places, or maybe not necessarily them specifically. You could also be like, this is where Casey Becker died, and so a Ghostface is going to attack that house. That way, this movie isn't about unmasking any one or two killers. This is about stopping the spread of toxic fandom and trying to narrow down where the source of all this is coming from. True Ghostface is going to be some dude behind a keyboard, and not necessarily a person that's going around doing the slashing, but there will be slashers. You could even have some of these characters not meet their untimely doom, like let's say they do attack Kirby from Scream 4. If you really don't want to commit to killing that character, you could have her stop that Ghostface, even unmask him, and say not necessarily who the killer is, but in whose name these killings are being done, and that is for the killer cut of Stab. And I think that's a really compelling and interesting place to go. Now, this does have some bearings to a previous Scream film that never was, and that is Scream 3. Scream 3 very loosely had some elements of this story. You were going to find out that Stu had survived the first Scream movie, the events of that. He was going to be the ultimate killer in Scream 3 in a reveal where he was working from prison at organizing Ghostface attacks within Woodsboro. I think it'd be more interesting to take this sort of nationally. Let's say, like, Joel is smart. He's not going to stay at Windsor College or in that area, and clearly he didn't follow Gale. So you could have Joel be somewhere else and have him be one of the people that Ghostface attacks in, say, Alaska. We haven't seen that setting within the Scream franchise. Or you could do something like, say Kirby just went off to Utah to be in full seclusion, or the cop go back to Hollywood and stuff like that for the detective. You could find out that that's how Mark and Sidney were together, as implied with the previous Scream film, or it could be a completely separate Mark. I think that is an interesting and compelling way to go. Do I think this is the direction they're going to go? Probably not. There seemed to be a lot of emphasis and focus on making Sam the new Sidney for the new generation, and I'm all for that. If you really want to focus this film on her perspective, and listening to this and have maybe the Loomis inside of her, as played by Skeet, come to her and say, we should stop these killers, we should stop this fuck from tarnishing my reputation or something like that, you could absolutely go that direction. But I think there's a lot of room and juice for this story to really ebb and flow. So let me know what you think. Do you think I'm off the mark of switching up the formula a little bit? I think that would be the biggest thing. I would Rian Johnson this movie, in that Rian Johnson made an excellent film in The Last Jedi, but it was a film that broke conventions of the franchise rather than adhered to them. And I think this would be a film that would break conventions. But I think you could do it well enough and tie in the legacy elements well enough to really make it kind of work. And also, if this is a sequel to a legacy film, the only ones of which we've had of these are Halloween Kills and the Last Jedi, are pretty much the only ones, because most of them die after the first legacy try hard. Your Terminator Genesises or Terminator Dark Fates and stuff, they don't necessarily springboard off into being sequelized. Those two do, and both of those films, Halloween Kills and The Last Jedi, kind of break formula. They very much adhere to a certain element within that formula, but they also get into more social issues, which this pitch does, and they just simply, they just break formula. And done right, I think you could do a very compelling film. So let me know, what do you think? And do you want to see more of these? I do have other pitch ideas, including how I would do a Joker 2. Yeah, let me know in the comments below. Do you want to hear more of these? And what do you think of my idea for Scream 6 or Scream the Killer Cut? Thanks for watching. Bye.